Hello and welcome back to the LFC Transfer Room for another edition of Transfer Central. Today we've got loads of news surrounding mainly Liverpool players, but before we go on to the news, Jack, Jay, how are you guys doing? Jack, I'll start with you. It's been a fun-filled day of transfer news today, hasn't it?
It's been a weird one. I don't want to say it's been entirely fun, but it should be a more interesting summer than we've had, I think, in recent years, based on just the needs of the squad. So, for our jobs and our desire to talk about transfers, it should be a pretty exciting time. But I'm doing quite well. Charlie, I hope you're doing well.
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. And Jay, how are you doing today on a lovely sunny day here in Great Britain?
Yeah, it is, mate. Very good weather. Same as Jack, mate. A lot of news coming out today. Sounds like it's going to be a big summer in terms of out and potentially in. So, be a busy one, I imagine.
Yeah, definitely. And just for everybody who is joining the stream, make sure you leave a like on the video. Also, if you're new to the channel, subscribe. Evening, Jen, and everybody else joining the chat. Get your comments in, and we'll bring them up. So, first story of the day. You know, James Pierce come out with what he likes to call a mailbag, where he just builds up stories for about a million months and then posts them all. We'll start off a little bit easier today, and one that I'm not too sure will transpire, but James Pierce reported that Liverpool are hoping to agree an extension with Naby Keita, and I've also heard this is a 3-year deal on top of his 1 year remaining. Jack, there is a lot of controversy surrounding Naby Keita in the fan base. I feel like you either love him or you hate him. There's not really an in between. I mean, what are your thoughts on him?
I mean, I can fully agree with that sentiment of the love or hate because I was on the love side of things, and I think there was almost a breaking point of the Champions League final, um, where he just kind of didn't come on, didn't have the biggest impact. And I don't hate him. Like, I mean, I think I'm more indifferent to his future. Um, I think the biggest thing, it would be, I think the best way to describe it is it would be stunning of the five guys who have got their contracts out who end in 2023. Salah, Mane, Firmino, Keita. I think Oxlade is in that boat as well, if I'm not mistaken. Of those five guys, if Naby is the one who gets his contract extended, I don't think he's earned that. Um, but again, like it could be a case of if there isn't a great fit or replacement in the market, we don't get a great bid for him. I don't think he needs to leave necessarily. I just wonder if there are better options out there, and we can almost kind of have higher standards. I'm open to being proven wrong by Keita. You know, I'm always going to leave that door open for him because I'm always going to love him. Um, but it's just a weird one, especially with it being bookended. I think with the Mane and Salah news, where they're not having their contracts, or at least with the prices that they wanted on their new contract renewals, but they are going to get Keita one. It struck me a little weird.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Jay, I know you've been a bit of you've talked out on Keita before, but you recently was, you know, starting to like him a bit. What would your thoughts be on extending his contract? I mean, he doesn't have to be a starter, but he could be a rotation player.
I think kind of what Jack's just said rings true, to be honest. It seems strange that you prioritise an Naby Keita contract when he's not one of the star performers in the team. The thing for Keita with me is he is Marmite with the fan base. You either love him or hate him. For me, he can look brilliant one game, and then the next game, it just completely passes him by. And he's too inconsistent for me to give him a new deal. And I think he's a good make weight if you're trying to get another midfielder in. If I know it's unlikely we get Bellingham this year, but if we were to do that, I'd say to knock a bit of money off, here's Keita and however much for Bellingham. I wouldn't give him a new deal, to be honest. I'd take the money while you can because he is injury prone and he's inconsistent, which doesn't really bode well when you're trying to mount title challenges and Champions League challenges. So I get shut now, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, another midfielder who is leaving. You know, Liverpool seem guaranteed to sign a midfielder this summer, despite Liverpool Echo reporting differently. But James Milner is could be leaving this summer. Owen would choose James Milner over Naby Keita. But I'm going to ask this question to you too. If you could offer one a new deal, who would it be? Jack, I'll start with you.
It really depends on the incomings, because I think the Milner one, look, he's a machine. He's kind of proven that he can last a really, really long time in his career, but he's not lasting more than a year at the top level, I think. I think if he lasts 2 more years at the top level, it's a remarkable testament to him as a professional and him as an athlete. And so for that reason, I think that, and I still trust Keita more. I am going to say Keita just because a new contract for him would mean a 3-year deal, so it would mean that he's here for a few years. So the financial return on that would be better than the Milner one. The only way I think a Milner contract makes sense is if it also is tied with potentially some coaching, either with the first team or with the youth team, where he's staying on for a leadership role beyond just the pitch, because I think his playing time should be reducing. Great guy, great servant to the club. I think he's a legend of Liverpool because of just the trophies he's won since he's come in. But I think that he's also, he should be being shifted onwards. Keita sells a bit more in the tank, I think. Milner, I'm less optimistic on that.
Yeah, I mean, Jay, Milner is older, but he does have more experience. He can play in more positions. He's got that leadership quality as well. But again, Keita's younger, maybe a bit more of a Klopp midfielder. We know how much Klopp rates him. And, I think if it is a new contract, he's probably not going to get a wage increase. It'll probably be the same that's he on. So who are you going with?
It probably sounds controversial, to be honest, mate, because of his age, but I go with Milner over Keita. Milner can play makeshift in a couple of positions. His leadership in the dressing rooms, you can't really replace that. And like I said, I've already said about Naby, he's inconsistent, he's injury prone. He can't really be relied on, where I think you could say the polar opposite to Milner. He can be relied on, even if he doesn't play 10 games. You've seen against Newcastle, he can come in and have a great game. And when you have to, he can make an appearance at right back as well. So for me, it would be Milner. I know that you can still get money for Keita as well, which you can't for Milner. So I think if you weigh it all up, it makes more sense. I know it's controversial because of his age, but for me, Milner, because you can still get money for Keita as well.
Yeah, I think I'm probably more in Jack's boat, if I'm going to be honest. I think Keita has a bit more to offer. I think when he's good, he's good. When Milner's, it's a hard one, to be fair. It's harder than I thought it would be, but we'll speak for Owen, and Owen would definitely go with James Milner. Okay, next story. But first, if you are new to the stream, I can see everybody joining. Dominic, Kai, Telio, all the regulars. Make sure you are leaving a like on the video. Also, if you're new to the channel, please do subscribe. Okay, next story. According to CM Jornal, or Correio da Manhã, a Portuguese outlet, they have exclusively claimed that Liverpool are in a real race to sign Benfica's Darwin Nunez. Manchester United are also interested in the Uruguayan, but he has a €150 million release clause. However, it is thought that 100 mil would be enough to satisfy Benfica. Jack, that seems like a lot of money for somebody who is a very raw talent, I'd say.
That's exactly how I would put it as well. I mean, 100 million. We've Van Dijk, because I think it was the euros. It was the currency, if I'm not mistaken, Charlie. So Van Dijk got to similar numbers. Allison slightly pushes that. Who else have we signed? And those guys were the finished deal. We only spring that kind of cash when they are really able to kind of be there. I think Nunez has a really high ceiling. I think he could be very good, but he's not there right now. And I think that there are still major gaps in his game. He's young. It's fine. I'm not saying he's going to be a crap player, but I just think if you're going to be spending that kind of money at this point in Liverpool's trajectory, where you need to be challenging for trophies next season, replacing one of your starters in one of the best 11s in the world next season. It's a guy that's been in the chat, Lewandowski, I think is a far better option, because I think you would get Lewandowski coming down from his peak. I think either of those two would be great, but you have Lewandowski coming down from his peak, Kane basically at his peak versus Nunez who's rising. Nunez would make sense if Mane was still here and he wasn't going to have to be a starter. I think whoever the forward signing is going to have to be a starter very, very often this coming season. And I just don't see Nunez as the guy who moves the needle. I think he's similar to Jota in the sense that his overall game has some gaps. It's inconsistent. He's a great finisher, can score goals, but I think we've seen that you need a dynamic forward. I think the only guy you could really kind of afford to concede the build-up and the pressing and the control was Erling Haaland because he's just such a machine. But we didn't get Erling Haaland, obviously. I think that Nunez does not make sense for Liverpool or United. I think I'd be happy if United signed him because they don't seem tailor-made for him, and he'd be kind of a poor signing. I think Nunez would be good under Klopp, but I just think that there are better options out there that are cheaper as well. I know it's not my money, but you have to factor in that the budget is probably 100 million this summer. I'd be stunned. I'd be surprised, pleasantly surprised if they spent more than 100 million net. So to blow that all on one guy, I don't know. I don't see it personally. I'm open to arguments, but for me, Charlie, it's not the right move.
Yeah, I think as well, I said he's so raw, and we saw with Luis Diaz that goals in the Premier League don't always transpire to goals in the Premier League. It's been Luis Diaz's main criticism, but he has been fantastic apart from that. But, even though he was great against us, Jay, it's, as Jack said, we're not going to replace Mane with someone who needs to be taught the basics, are we? And I know who you're going to say who needs to replace him, a certain Christopher Nkunku. But, more on Nunez, it just doesn't seem like the right fit. It doesn't seem like the right time at the right price for Liverpool, does it?
If you look at the market, mate, I think 100 million for Nunez is poor, like a really poor signing. Haaland was 75 mil. I know that was a release clause, but if you compare the two, Haaland's well ahead. He's got much more Champions League experience. He's been doing it in a more competitive league. And Nunez's numbers are impressive, but it's like you said, it's in Portugal. Portugal's not even in the top 5 leagues in Europe. It's a completely different ballgame. You can even put France above that, and I don't particularly rate the French league. So I think 100 million outlay for a player who's unproven, it'd be poor business on our part. And to be honest, the lad's got a terrible first touch, His first touch is like Lukaku's. And I just think for that money, you probably could get Nkunku, which I know I've been singing about him, but it'd probably be the same price and you're getting twice the player at least.
I want to bring up another name that hasn't really been mentioned a ton, but it's João Felix. I think he'd be the legit perfect replacement for that false nine. And you put 100 million in front of Atletico, they might bite that. And João Felix is twice the player Nunez is. And it builds off of the Diaz aspect on the left, where I don't think Nunez complements Diaz in the way that a false nine would. And especially with Salah. I think he misses playing with Bobby a lot, where he really kind of was able to thrive with a proper nine next to him. It's going to be interesting because it looks like Salah's going to be here next year. Mane isn't. With no Mane, almost you always had that dynamic between Mane and Salah, where did they like each other? Did they kind of not work well together? Since Mane moved into the middle and they had to link up a lot, Salah kind of dropped off the face of the earth in terms of scoring. So I think that the priority should be a nine who can bring in. You'll be a bit deeper. A Harry Kane
play.
The link-up play is the biggest.
Yeah. That's what Nunez doesn't have either. To be fair, he's not good at link-up play, so that's why I completely agree. He's not the right signing.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if it happened.
Harry Kane is literally the perfect player. I think if he was 3 years younger, we'd throw everything at him. I think Klopp would do it. I think his age is the only issue. I think as well, you brought up João Felix. I think that's another amazing reason why not to go after Darwin Nunez.
Yeah.
Because how much did Atleti spend on him? 140 million. They spent ridiculous money, around 100 million. I'm pretty sure
it was over
it was.
100. Yeah, definitely.
So and I think Atleti fans would probably be the first to admit he hasn't lived up to what they were expecting. You know, he has been a great talent, but for the price, they'd probably be willing to sell him at a similar price. You know, and I think that's why you don't go after Nunez. I think we won't do it. We definitely won't do it. And it's not a Klopp signing whatsoever. So I don't think we really have to worry too much about Darwin Nunez coming to Liverpool, if we're being honest.
I do want to bring up a point, Charlie, is that this market is just bad in general. Like, this is what, like, you kind of have those summers where there are players that are available that could make things interesting. I don't probably have years in the back of my mind where like this is a good summer where there's a lot of big transfers and stuff, but this just feels like a market that's starved of ready-made players for decent prices. Like guys like Nunez should not be 100 million. You know, Felix isn't on the market. And Nkunku is good. He's got some errors and things missing in his game. He's be quite expensive. It's a bigger debate, I'm sure, but it lends credence to the idea that we should have been spending more in markets past when there were options that we liked, because we couldn't have predicted in the future what players would be available. And I find myself, you know, kind of a bit underwhelmed by the options available. If Nunez is one of the best guys that's accessible, I think that spells trouble for kind of who we're trying to sign, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Again, guys, if you are new, please do leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel as well. If you're new to the channel, it helps us out a bunch. Okay, Sadio Mane, pretty much guaranteed that he's leaving at this point. Every single German outlet that's very reliable is claiming that Bayern Munich are leading a race. James Pearce come out today and said that Liverpool put a 43.5 million price tag on him, which is around 5 mil more than what we signed him for in 2016. So not a bad profit considering we got 6 years of service out of him. But Sky Germany, who are a lot more reliable than Sky, have revealed that Bayern Munich have put an offer on the table of 30 million euros plus an additional payment of 5 to 10, depending on games, trophies, stuff like that. However, whether Liverpool are willing to accept is unknown as of yet. Jack, what they're offering is roughly around £10 million less, I think, than what Liverpool have put on him, roughly, give or take a few million, which, you know, sounds like a lot, and it is, but not to us, not to them clubs. It's a sticky one for Liverpool, isn't it? Do you cash in on him? Do you let him stay for a year? He clearly wants to leave. So do you just say thank you for your service, Mane, and let him go to where he wants?
You obviously have to put on the persona and the face that you are in control. You can call the shots on the prices. Because if Mane is like, hey, I want to leave, he hasn't publicly said anything, to his credit. You know, we've kind of seen Lewandowski do the exact opposite for Bayern, where he's kind of done the media circus, where he's kind of said, you know, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to leave. And that kind of ties their hands. Our hands aren't really tied as much as they are for Bayern in that instance. So I think you should credit Mane for that. I don't think he should be back next year if he doesn't want to be here. I think he's earned that right. He's been a phenomenal servant. And I think this is perfect for every party involved. He's, I think, waning in his powers. I think he'll be very good for Bayern Munich. He's still got that in him in a different system, but he lacks the explosiveness to play on the wing. I think his blink-up play was good as a false nine. I think there are better options as a false nine, though. So I think it makes sense for him to move on. If he wants to leave, makes sense to let him leave. And then it just comes down to getting as much as you can out of him. I think if it has to be 35 million pounds, if it has to be 30 million pounds, if it's 42, 42 sounds great, because that is halfway to a really big signing. I think if you're going to try and break your club record spend of 75 million pounds, that covers half of it right there. So it would kind of help the sell to buy mentality, because a big thing in the last few years has been, you know, if Liverpool want to sign players of the caliber of the Van Dijk, the Alisson, the Fabinho, the Keita, that summer of 2018 and the winter that preceded that, that was all built off of one of the biggest sales in football history, in Felipe Coutinho. I've always wondered, what players are we selling to get that kind of cash? Because our best players I don't want us to sell. Now one of our best players wants to leave, and one of our best ability to get money is there in Mane. I think it's perfect for all parties if he moves on. I just hope that it's a very amicable end, because he deserves that. It makes me a little sad that he'll end his Liverpool career on that defeat, in Paris. But that's a sport, sometimes you got to replace the old, bring in the new to kind of revitalize things. But I just hope that the most money we can get, the better. But they got to maintain the face that they have control about, the situation.
Yeah, I mean, Jay, it's not as much as we were hoping for, but considering all that he's give us, do you just say, what, thanks for the memories, Sadio, we'll respect your wishes and let him leave to Bayern?
It reminds me a bit of the Thiago transfer with Munich, because he wanted to come to us and we were arguing over 5 or 10 million difference, whatever it is, and eventually obviously we came to a compromise. So it does remind me of that. The thing with it is now, it's a bit of a tricky situation with what's been said about Salah, which I imagine we'll cover later, but I'd sooner, if Salah's talking about leaving on a free next season to a Premier League rival, I wish we could. Jack's completely right in what he's saying. If Mane wants to leave, he's done everything for us and we should be able to go, you've done everything you can, go and leave and do what you want to do. But at the same time, I'd rather keep Mane another year and let him go for free and sell Salah now, because we'll get a better price for Salah than we will Mane. And that's my only argument. Mane's not the type of man who's going to down to us if he has to stay one more year. I'd rather risk that than letting Salah go to a rival on a free, because it'll destroy his legacy. And the thought of him playing for City or United or Newcastle, depending on where they are come that time, I just think it'd be poor business from Liverpool to allow that to happen.
Yeah, I want to kind of build off that. I think that I'm almost refusing to believe Salah will play for another Premier League team. I know he's already played for Chelsea, so it's not out of the realm of possibility for him as a player in his career. But I view that as a negotiating tactic. Like, obviously there's that fear deep down. And it's an interesting point, because I think regardless of, I agree with you that Mane until maybe like March would be fine of next year. He'd be fine. But once you get really late in the season, it's impossible to avoid that, where you're thinking my next contract isn't going to be here. I don't want to tear my ACL and then lose millions of euros, millions of pounds. It's not an easy one to be in, and they've kind of put themselves in this spot. It's a weird one. I think selling. I've almost kind of mentally prepared myself to sell Mane, so to almost switch completely, just selling Salah would be like a bit too much for my brain to handle.
Do you know what you've got to remember though, Jack, about saying he wouldn't play for a rival? He was on loan at Fiorentina, who wanted to do everything to keep him, and he swerved them for Roma, which is a direct rival at the time for Champions League football. So everyone thinks, oh, I love the club, I love this, I love that. They're footballers' words, they're not worth nothing. They're really not. How many times have we been told, oh, I love the club, and they all go when they think the grass is green? So I don't think Salah for 5 minutes will care about not playing for Liverpool. He's done it to Fiorentina. There's no reason he wouldn't do it to us. I appreciate he's accomplished a lot more than us, and the love for him is a lot more than Fiorentina. But Fiorentina put everything out to try and keep him, and he basically gave them the finger and went to Roma. So for me, I don't think he'd be that worried.
And as a negotiating tactic, it would almost be a bit stronger, where like he hasn't before. He has the proof that he's done this.
Yeah,
that's a good point. That's a great point.
I mean, getting back to Sadio Mane, I mean, we've sort of talked on it a bit, but I mean, for the 42 million, do you think that's a good deal for Liverpool if they can get it?
Yes.
Yeah, I do. It's like Jack said, that can be put towards going for a 70-80 million pound player. So yeah, but obviously we have to make sure the replacement's available and that we can get one.
Yeah. Definitely. Okay, so on to the next topic. Before we go on to that, though, make sure you do leave a like on the video. Also, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and we will loads of content coming up. Okay, next one that probably the majority of you are here for. Jude Bellingham. James P has come out today and said that Liverpool is widely admired by Liverpool, but there's an acceptance that it might be tough to land the 18-year-old this summer, given that Borussia Dortmund have already sold Erling Haaland. It would take in excess of £80 million to sign him. Now, I don't know if he said that weirdly, but how I think that sounds is if we give Borussia Dortmund 80 million this summer, that they would take it. That's what I got from his thingio. But that would then mean that his price tag is being decreased next summer, which I don't think happens under any circumstances. But Jack, we've lost out on Mane, who would have cost about £80 million if we were to sign him. However, Jude Bellingham is somebody who Liverpool have tracked for a very long time. Do you think they just pull the trigger now they've missed out on one of the main targets and say, you know what, we'll just take him this summer? At the end of the day, he's only 18 years old, so he still is young. But next season, when Borussia Dortmund are probably going to be more likely to sell him, we're probably going to be battling every major club in Europe, aren't we?
I have no idea. When I saw that figure, £80 million, it kind of showcases how much transfers have been diluted and skyrocketed in price in recent years in football. That's cheap. That is cheap for a guy of Bellingham's quality, considering that his contract is, 4 more years, 5 more years? He's not pressed for a renewal. He's can walk into our 11. He's English, which is a big factor because it means that you have to have 8 English players in your squad, and if one of them is one of your most key players, it allows you to bring in more foreign players and kind of be a bit more flexible with your squad. Because you looked at the 11, for that Champions League final, it was Trent and Henderson were, the only English players there. It's a big factor if you don't have that. If you said 120 million for Jude Bellingham gets him out, I'm saying pull the trigger right now. Because if you're telling me you're selling Naby Keita and Sadio Mane, and maybe we have to kind of take a bit of an inferior forward to bring in Jude Bellingham, look, he's 18. He's the kind of guy where he's here for the next 15 years. That's not 120 million pounds for 1 year of service. That is, 10 million pounds a year for the next 12 years. That's even a good deal in that sense. I think that I mentioned how poor this market is. I hope that Liverpool break their model of spending on good players that fit. Sure, maybe they can find a few that really do, that are under the radar. I fully believe them to do that. But they shouldn't settle for the cheaper, somewhat fit. Get the perfect fit for the big price. They cost a lot because they fit like a glove. Jude Bellingham, Harry Kane. I think one of the two. Both of them, and I'm asking for too much, I understand that. But one of the two would transform the way we play and would fit from day one. I think Bellingham has a better chance of happening because 80 million pounds, I think that's even respectable in the sense that it's just barely beyond our record signing. I think that, and especially if Keita and Mane go, that's pretty much funded right there by itself. That's a no-go.
Yeah, Jay, I'm going to sort of break down a few transfers. If Liverpool say they don't have money for this, well, let's say we go just off player sales. Mane, 40 million. Ox, 10 million. Minamino, 15 million. Nico Williams, 15 million. Nat Phillips, 15 million. You're removing James Milner. All of them wages off, including James Milner, Divock Origi. Their money is there if they want to fund it just by player sales, isn't it?
I think what Jack said was spot on, mate. When I seen 80 million for Bellingham, I sort of read it twice because I thought Dortmund would be asking for in excess of 100 million, given everything Jack's already covered. But the reason I think it's important we actually do pull the trigger this season is you've got to look at the rest of Europe. Man United are in a terrible position. You would never want to sign for them right now. That might not be the case next season. Chelsea aren't in the best position to be signing players right now. Man City have just signed Haaland. Real Madrid have just signed Mane for a similar price. There isn't really anyone else that could probably realistically go for him properly in terms of next season. You'd have a lot more competitors in comparison to this season because a lot of them have already made moves for people. Obviously, you've mentioned the player sales. We should have a budget regardless of that anyway. So that only adds to what our budget should be this season anyway, which I thought it was over 80 million, including player sales. So I think it's actually the perfect time to go for him now. Even if you didn't want to spend full 80, offer 50 in Keita or 60 in Keita.
Yeah, I also want to hit on the fact that you mentioned United not in a good spot this summer. Chelsea, I don't think are going for a guy like Bellingham. They need a defensive mid more. I mean, everyone else pretty much needs defensive mids beyond ourselves and City, which means that eights like Bellingham aren't really the priority. Declan Rice is a stupid amount of money because he's a not one of a kind player. He's a rare player who can play as a lone defensive mid, and everyone wants to play that 4-3-3. United are trying to convince Frankie de Jong to join them at all costs because he would transform the way they play. He's their priority. Bellingham, there's no eyes on him right now versus next summer. If de Jong, Declan Rice, either defensive mid or two are signed by some of these sides that need it, and then you see Chelsea and maybe Arsenal break into the top four, and they have some money they want to spend. City will have not bought Haaland, so they'll be in there as well for him because De Bruyne still will be getting on in age a bit. You go from it's not a one-horse race for us in the slightest. People will still be interested. But you go from it being a pretty narrow field of contenders to it could be 4 or 5 teams from England, and that's not even factoring in that Madrid are already spending on Tchouaméni. Maybe PSG are pissed off they didn't get Tchouaméni, and they say, let's go sign Bellingham. There are other teams outside of England who have a lot of money as well. So I think you've don't put it off. I think you have to make one statement sign in the summer. I'd love multiple, but you have to make at least one. If Mane goes, one of your staples, I don't think we have a ready-made replacement. I don't want to go into the next season with Jota being our starting number 9. I think he's capable of being that position, but it can't be with no competition. There needs to be someone there. Henderson cannot be playing as much as he is. He should be more so a backup 6 than a starting number 8 on the right side. So I think there's a lot of signings needed, and a statement one could really go a long way. I think Bellingham is perfect for that.
Yeah, look, I think an absolutely unbelievable deal for both parties would be a Jude Bellingham swap with Naby Keita, but also giving them even more, giving them 60 million, or 65 million, and just saying look, we know you don't want to sell this summer. We're going to give you, at one point, the best midfielder in the Bundesliga. Yes, he might not be anymore, but at one point he was. And, that then solves their crisis of having to go out and find a midfielder. So there's a lot of options. I don't buy this whole Dortmund won't sell him this summer. You give Dortmund the price that they want and they'll sell him. They have always done that. They did it the year after. They did it the year after they lost the Champions League final, where they lost about 5 of their main players to Bayern Munich, and they've done it in the past as well. So it's definitely something that they have done before.
I just want to bring up an interesting point. I'm just scrolling through the transfer market, like the website Liverpool's history transfers year on year. They haven't made, it's in dollars for me because the accent, I'm here in America. They have not made over $50 million in transfer sales since 2017-2018 season when they sold Felipe Coutinho, and Coutinho took up literally 150 million of that. So that summer was just Mamadou Sakho, a bit of loan fee for Origi, Lucas Leiva. So they have not made a lot of money in a transfer window in a long, long time, and all of a sudden now you've got 2 pretty decently priced assets in Mane and Keita potentially to go. So big contracts in Milner and Origi, not necessarily big for both of them, but contracts going, and then a lot of deadwood. Not deadwood. That's poor. That's a poor way of saying Nico Williams and Nat Phillips. Ben Davies, are
inadequate backups.
Inadequate backups who are going to go and be replaced by younger guys that are going to make some money. We could legitimately be making $100 million easily this summer, which then if you spend $100 million on top of that, you're almost wondering how many positions, how many players are you buying then? $200 million, I think, gets you 3 players. And if you have 3 players for that kind of money, you're signing some good guys. And Bellingham, I think, genuinely though, I don't think we putz around with the Keita plus money thing. I think we just say literally $80 million. Here you go for Jude.
Yeah, definitely.
And unsettle him.
Yeah, I'd pull the trigger. I think we're all in agreement. I think I speak for most Liverpool fans. Jude Bellingham's probably the perfect midfielder. I think we all were like, Chouameni this season's great, but we were all still like, and then Bellingham next season. So now that Chouameni's off the table, it's time to go all guns blazing for Jude Bellingham, in my opinion. Okay, before we get on to the last topic, I know the guys got a bit trigger friendly before we went on to the main part of the news about Salah. But if you're new to the stream, there's 100 people watching, so please like the video. It helps us out so much and it puts the channel out there to more people. Also, if you are new, make sure you are subscribed. We have content daily, streams daily. So make sure you subscribe with the bell notification on. And there's also a Discord. We're trying to get that more active. It's just updates on the channel if you are interested in that type of stuff. So, Mohamed Salah. James Pearce, again, another James Pearce news. I feel like it's been a James Pearce show today. He has said that Mohamed Salah's future is increasingly uncertain. Unless he receives an improved offer, he will leave as a free agent at the end of next season. His preference would be to stay in the Premier League if he leaves Liverpool. There was also a couple of other stories regarding Salah around James Pearce. I'll try and pluck them from my brain, but I think he got offered a 30% increase on his wages. I don't know if that's an increase on the original offer we give him or if that was the original offer. And he also only wants to sign a 2-year extension, which would take his Liverpool contract to 3 years. So he'd be 33 at the time. Jack, who can realistically afford him in the Premier League? I have 2 names, Manchester City and Chelsea. But surely he doesn't do that. He has seen what has happened to other players who leave Liverpool. And as we always say, the grass isn't always as green, is it? So it's a bold move for him to do that, isn't it?
I think I'm going to add a third team to the mix that I think is the most likely in my eyes, and that's Newcastle. Because I think what they're going to do is we have a history of developing players. We developed Mo Salah. So we could have the ego, we could have the perspective of saying, we can replace you. We can go sign Bukayo Saka and make him the next you. We could make Jared Bowen the next Mohamed Salah. I genuinely believe in both of those guys as potential Salah replacements, because they just, they're left-footed right wingers. The comparisons go beyond that. We'll probably have to dig a bit deeper into that, but we could dig into it from a perspective of we can replace you because we have the coaching, we have the squad around it, and and the very pessimistic view of it would be you were very good at Roma before you joined, but you became world class here under Klopp and in this system. You go anywhere else, you'll be just another player, another average player. He could be a legitimate one of the greatest players at Liverpool of all time if he stays and wins more trophies. But if he goes to City, look at Jack Grealish. He was the guy for Aston Villa. He was adored by all of England, basically, because he was playing for a smaller club, his boyhood side, left the club for a lot of money, admittedly, and became just an average player in a great team. He was just another part of it. It would be very sad. I think that he's still got some player in him. I thought the news that was quite literally the worst case scenario, because it wasn't even just that. I would prefer a long contract. Give him a 5-year contract. This is the kind of guy who at 36 could still be at a very high level, just because the way he handles himself fitness wise. But for it to only be 2 years, I don't know what he wanted. What, sixth highest in the world was the fee that he wanted?
Yeah, I think he wants 420 grand a week.
And what's he on right now? 200.
I've seen conflicting reports. I think he's already one of the highest earners. I think he's probably on about 260 grand a week, but it's not been confirmed. There's a lot of numbers between the likes of 280 and 200 grand a week.
I mean, so if they offered him a 15% pay increase on 260 grand a
30.
week, well, what was it? 30 that they offered, or was
Yeah.
it 15?
30. That's what Pierre said anyway. I think.
Was it 30? I could have sworn I saw it was 15.
I feel like it was 30. Keep talking, I'll check.
Oh yeah. Well, basically, the point I'm making is that you're pulling teeth, and I get, you look at what's happened with Bayern, where they have some players on some pretty big contracts that they're having some issues over there.
Sorry.
So yeah, but 15 I think was really small, because 15 on a 260 grand a week contract just pushes you up to 300 grand a week by 40,000 pounds. And I'll defend Salah with this. I've been talking a lot. I'll let Jay get in. But the last thing I want to kind of really mention right now is people say, oh, 300 grand a week. How will he survive? How will he put food on the table? That's not the case. He already is one of the top 1% of earners in the world, because he does such a unique thing. But it's capitalism, you know. His service is in demand. There's a cost to it. If other players are being paid 400,000 pounds a week and he's performing better than them, he is very right to say, why am I not making that? Same with Sadio Mane. I saw the report that he wanted 392 grand a week, which I thought was pretty hefty. But it's fair for them to ask for that, because they believe that's their value. They should go for it.
Yeah, I mean, Jay, my opinion before I ask you, I don't think Salah holds any cards at all. You know, we can say to him, as Jack said, you're not the only player we have made. Jurgen Klopp has made world class. He has made Luis Diaz, you know, what he's going to turn into, God only knows, with a full preseason. Diogo Jota, we've stepped his level up massively. Sadio Mane, even Roberto Firmino. You know, this isn't the only player that we've been like, we'll get you from a step below and we'll bring you to the next level. We have a lot of examples that we've done that with. So Salah doesn't hold any cards there. I think once Salah leaves as well, his goals that he scored will distribute between the rest of the squad anyway, because as much as people don't want to admit it, Salah's greedy, and that's what you have to be one of the best players in the world. But if he isn't there, his goals get shuffled around more. And also, I feel like he's holding the club to ransom, and people are starting to see this. And with his idiotic comments before the Champions League game saying, I'm the best player in the world, I'm going to win Ballon d'Or, that's like, he's just so cocky. It's starting to make him a bit unlikable, isn't it?
Couldn't agree anymore with everything you just said, mate. There's this narrative as well where people are going, oh, it's his agent, this, his agents, that. At the end of the day, Mo Salah's the one who signs the contract, not his agent. If his agent's asking for too much and Salah's desperate to stay at Liverpool, you tell your agent to piss off and you sign the contract and stay. I don't think he's got any cards to be playing hardball with Liverpool. His form since January has been awful. His form on the mic has been better than what it has on the pitch, because he's just coming across as a cocky, a player I never thought he was, to be honest, mate. I've always seen him as a humble, great player, and over the last 6 months, he's just got this cocky, like he's bigger than the club order about him, and he really isn't. Like you've just said, we've sold many superstars and made brand new ones. The reason I think he's saying this as well, by the way, Charlie, is because he doesn't have any cards. So because he doesn't have any cards, it's easy for him to go back to the owners and say, all right, then I won't sign a new contract, I'll go to a rival, hoping that the owners will panic on the back of that and think, we can't let him go to City, United, Chelsea, whoever, we're going to have to up the offer. So I think that's what he's playing at. But he's blatantly holding the club to ransom. And that's not loving the club and the fans the way you keep claiming it is. If you love the club and the fans, you're earning a healthy wage now. you've been offered an improved term on that, sign it if you care about the club. And that's why, for me, I'd sell him. I really would sell him. I wouldn't be able to ransom buy him whatsoever.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it would be a big ball move by Jurgen Klopp and FSG to sell Mane and Salah in the same window. But I think it needs to be done. I think the attack needs it needs refreshed. People are too comfortable in the positions. And you bring in two wingers. I think Jarrett Bowen would be one if we were to sell both of them. He comes in, he's had an unbelievable season with West Ham. Klopp could easily make him into the superstar. And then you bring in, a forward. Who that is, I don't know. But you bring in these two players and, you're like, it's a lot of pressure, but I truly believe that Liverpool have the right personnel to select the right players. But sorry, I'll let you finish in a sec. But going on to who would sign him, I've been thinking about it while you've been talking, and I agree with you, Jack. I think Newcastle are the only ones stupid enough to sign him, because you look at the last 6 months of Salah when he's been piping up. You can't be piping up when you're putting in the performance he was. It's not even like he was just having, he just wasn't finding the net. He was just rubbish. There was probably maybe 5 games since he returned from AFCON that you can say he was his old self. But apart from that, he was rubbish. And let's say if he continues that for another year at Liverpool in the Premier League, no club is going to be like, okay, we'll give you the 400 grand you want, because he's just put in 18 months of absolutely rubbish performance. But sorry, go on, Jack.
There's a lot for me with the Salah thing. It's a variety of options, variety of things. I think that I'm fine with Salah sitting here. In my opinion, at least, I think I'm in the minority on this. I think he can love the club, love the fans, and also feel undervalued and want to be paid a ton of money. That's fine to want to have a lot of money and to be paid a lot of money and also love the club. I don't think those things can't coexist. I do take great exception to the threat that he's almost put up that I will go somewhere else. If he just said, I'll walk at the end of this year, at the end of my contract, if you don't give me what I want, that's fine. That's all he can do. There's a good comment from Tapster that says that basically. All he has to do is honor the contract and then leave for free if he doesn't sign a new one. That's as much leverage as you can possibly give, But if he joined a Premier League club that gave him a good amount of money, that's fine. But almost to kind of threaten it and say, do you want to be seeing me in the 23-24 season lining up in the black and white for Newcastle and playing against you in the Premier League? You don't want to see that, do you? That I do take exception to. And I hope it results in a contract being offered that he's acceptable, he finds acceptable, because I think Bowen is a capable replacement. I think Saka is a capable replacement, but I think they should, both of them, one of the two of them, in my opinion, those are my best forwards that I want us to sign, should be signed to compete with Salah. I don't think you can look at what happened with Mane when he was shifted out of his position to the false 9 and see the improvements that he had after Diaz was signed and not say that pushing Salah with a direct replacement, direct competition couldn't help him. In my opinion, what I would do is I would continue trying to negotiate a contract with him, sign Jarrett Bowen, and just have Jarrett Bowen hot on his heels. And then you're in a spot where, what if Salah can't, play better than Bowen? Then he just kind of walk off, and it's almost like the eggs in his face in that instance. Or Salah returns to the form that deserves 400 grand a week. You pay him that, and you have Mo Salah at his absolute peak. I just think that I don't want to. I think his future will be at Liverpool for another year, at the very least. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the exact same situation with two players here, Salah and Mane, and the way that each one has gone about it, it just speaks volumes of the character. Sadio Mane, he wanted 300 grand a week. Liverpool didn't offer him that. So he said, okay, that's fine. My time at the club is up. It is what it is. I'm a legend in this club. I love the club. I always will. It's time for me to go on to different pastures. And he said, I want to join Bayern Munich. He's not pushing for a move. yeah, but according to report, he's asked Jurgen Klopp, and Jurgen Klopp has said, I respect your decision. But on the other hand, Mohamed Salah saying, if you don't give me a new contract, I'm signing for a rival. It speaks volumes of Salah and his representatives, and Mane and his representatives, and if it was to happen, then it's I don't care, it's a Fernando Torres-esque, possibly even worse, and it'll go down in Liverpool and it'll always stick with them. Look at Michael Owen. No matter how much people hate Michael Owen, he could have been one of Liverpool's greatest ever players if he had stayed. He won the Ballon d'Or at Liverpool, the only Liverpool player to do that. But instead, he snaked us and went to Real Madrid, and his career fizzled out, and then eventually signed for Man United. And as quick as that, you're gone from a potential all-time great to not even a Liverpool legend. And I think that's what happens if he joins the likes of Chelsea, Manchester City, or even worse.
Yeah, I also want to jump in and mention Wijnaldum as well as another guy where he wanted the money, he walked. He's still viewed. Some don't think he's a legend. Some think he is. I think he is personally because of just the moments that he had. And that's another debate entirely. But that debate is allowed to be had because he didn't fully disgrace the club as he left. He wanted money, but he was a fine performer. He wasn't great, obviously, in his last few months. We all know that. But he was acceptable at the level that he was playing. I personally can't see this contract situation in Salah's future being resolved in the next 2 months during this transfer window. I think it is going to be resolved, in like January, depending on how he kind of handles the next 6 months of his career. I just think he needs someone to be behind him. He needs someone to really push him because he hasn't had that since he signed. And he signed, 5 years ago now? He has not had a guy competing for his position. And it doesn't matter how individually motivated you are and how good you are at sport. You will always relax and be able to cruise because he knows what's gonna happen. Is he gonna get dropped for Jota, for Mane, Diaz on the right? There's just no chance he's gonna be replaced. So if you sign Bowen or Saka now, you not only say to Salah, you can be replaced. We want you here, but you can be replaced. And it forces him to kind of up his level. I think that's the best case scenario at the moment. But it just depends on, what he's willing to do and where his head's at. I truly believe that he can end up being here for the next 4 or 5 years. But it really depends on how negotiable the two sides end up being in the next few weeks and months.
Yeah, I mean, one question before we finish off. I'll start with you, Jack. Just plain and simple. If we were to sell him this year, how much would you sell him for?
He's only a year left in his contract. It's the classic scenario of how much would you sell him for and how much would you buy him for. I wouldn't buy him for more than 50 because he's on a bad run of form. There's a year left in his contract. You just let him run it down. But I wouldn't sell him for 50. I think that's way too little. For me, it'd be a minimum of 80 million. And that may be a case of no one's willing to pay that and cough that up. That's fine for me. If someone's willing to cough up 80 million pounds, I might say, all right, this is it. Kind of solves my headache. Let's go sign 2-3 good forwards. Darwin Nunez, all of a sudden, you can afford to kind of pay that price. But the issue with selling Salah is you're likely selling Mane as well, And so I don't know how you can compete for trophies next year. Like the Premier League title is what I want above all else. I don't know how you're competing for the Prem when from day one you have replaced 2 of your starting front 3. That for me is just a bit tough, kind of in those first few months in the league. I just think that considering where we are in Klopp's reign and with the squad's development, to see both of them go, it would have to be a lot of money and really kind of allow for a big, big reset. So I would say 80 million would be the minimum for me to turn my head. And that might not even be enough for me, Charlie.
Yeah. Jay?
It's a tricky situation, mate, because when you look at last season, Grealish has gone for 100 million. And I appreciate Salah's got 1 year left on his contract. But when you compare what the two of them have done in the game, Salah's levels ahead. That being said, clubs who are interested in him know that he can go for free next year. So are you really going to put out 100 million or 120 million, realistically 80 million, for a player that you know you can get for free next year? I know we've seen Real Madrid try and do that with Mbappe, but that's because Mbappe's a young lad who's got 10 years ahead of him. Mo Salah doesn't. So I think it's a really, really tricky situation for us to be in, because like I say, if you're offered 80 million, you know he's probably worth more than that. But at the same time, clubs who are interested know he's free next year. So do you take that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd honest to God, I think with what we've gotten out of him, how much we signed him for, and the wages that he wants, I think it would be good business to get 60 million plus from him. I think I'd accept that if somebody come in with it. I'd probably want over 75, but I think if someone plays hardball and says, 60 million, I'd be like, you know what? We've had a good run with Salah. He clearly is trying to blackmail us and hold the club to ransom. That 60 million he wants in wages. We've doubled our profit on him, and he's delivered us all these trophies. So I think that's what I'd go. But what the club goes with, who knows? But
I want to ask a quick question, Charlie. So I'm seeing this comment from Froggy. FSG should have sorted contracts years back. This Salah contract was one that was signed in 2018. I'm not sure how any of these contract situations could have been better handled, to be quite honest, because if you're talking about Salah, when would you have offered him a realistic contract extension? 2021, 2020? I don't know when the best time would have been to offer him that contract, because I think COVID threw a lot of things off, because finances were in question, the longevity of the team was in question, how much matches would be played. So that delayed a lot of contract discussions, and then time still proceeded to pass. So I don't know if we could have avoided the situation, or if this was just an inevitable situation when you had 5 or 6 players all expiring in the exact same year who were all of pretty big importance.
I mean, I think, honest to God, I think the reason why so many contracts are expiring next year is because these next 2 summer windows, are planned for a massive squad overhaul. I think this summer we get 3 signings, and next summer.
Is that a massive summer, Charlie?
Well, considering you've got to remember we just signed Canate, and when I'm talking about free signings, I'm talking about free signings who come straight into the first team, and or at least the main start, and not like people who are going to chill on the bench. And I think Luis Diaz was one of them players who was going to be one of them. But I think you see a midfielder, a striker, and we've already got the right back and another backup sorted with Carvalho and Ramsey. And then I think next season was when you was going to see another midfielder, another winger, and maybe another centre-back to replace Joel Matip. And then you're looking at the squad, and you've got a position everywhere, a backup position everywhere sorted for the next 8 years. So I think that's what they're looking at. We've got a fairly, apart from an attack and a couple of the midfielders, the rest of the squad's pretty healthy age-wise. I realise I've just named half of the squad, but there's going to be positions that get stepped up there. So I think the next 2 summers are massive. If people don't want to stay here, it is what it is. Jurgen Klopp just signed a new contract. He's committed to the club for another 4 years. So if they want out, I don't care. See you later. No player is bigger than the club.
I want to say there's one player, I think, if we can't get Jude Bellingham, that I would want to see us throw a lot of money at. And this might really get, people hate this one. Mason Mount. I think he is the perfect Jurgen Klopp midfielder. I just imagine him as the right-sided 8 next to, I think my dream summer, right, is Nkunku, Bowen, Mason Mount, and Gavi from Barcelona. Because you have Mount who could come in and be a starter. You have Bowen who could push Salah. You have Nkunku who could be a starter. I think that would be a really, really interesting summer. It would really kind of change things up. And Mount, I think, would be a really, really interesting one. I don't think he would leave Chelsea. He's an academy. He loves that club. But I don't know what does Tuchel see in him as the future? Part of the team? That's a big one.
don't think Mount would come in purely because of Carvalho. I think that completely rules that out. However, Gavi, I'd love Gavi. I think he would be my next signing. I think if we don't sign Bellingham this summer, we have to sign Gavi.
Do you think Carvalho would compete with Mount or Bellingham for minutes then in that midfield? I think he's a left winger.
He's not going to be a midfielder, but he's a different. If he does play midfield, he's going to be a different type of midfielder. He's going to be that attacking mid shadow striker that Klopp loves to play when we're losing that 4-2-4 with Thiago and Fabinho in midfield. So I don't think Mount will play that. I think Mount will play that position as well. He's not a midfielder. He doesn't play midfield for Chelsea. Most of the time, I feel like he's played on the wing a lot of the time this year, or he's played in a 2 right behind the striker. I rate Mount, but I think the Carvalho signing completely takes that off the table. But Gavi, 50 mil release clause, 17 years old, can play in midfield, actual midfield, as a 8, as a box-to-box midfielder. I think he's a perfect Jurgen Klopp signing. I'd love to. Now we've missed out on Germany. I'd love to sign him. But we've been rambling on for an hour now. So this is where we are going to leave the stream. Thank you to everybody who joined today. Please leave a like. It helps us out so much. It puts our videos out there for other people to watch them. Also, if you are new to the stream, please subscribe to the channel with the bell notification on. Go and follow us all on Twitter, Jack, Jay. Go and follow the LFC Transfer Room on Twitter for all your updates. And yeah, so thank you everybody for joining, and goodbye.